Recently, I went to Orange Theory, which I do quite often, and I had this epiphany. I've been doing Orange Theory for about a year and a half, and last week was the first time ever that one of the coaches corrected my rowing technique. And it was so helpful. I'm so glad that she did that. I didn't even know that I was doing it inefficiently. And it got me thinking about how often we have blind spots in communication and in other areas of life, which is why it's so helpful to hire a coach. And that got me thinking about how many people miss opportunities because of these blind spots. So, my goal today is to share with you a few of those things, those some examples around people that missed opportunities and scenarios so that you don't miss any opportunities related to your career, your business, or your life. So let's jump in with another example for me. When I missed an opportunity way back when, I was in a performing group and we were getting directions on stage. So picture we're on stage during a rehearsal on a bunch of risers. We were all seated there, 150 of us, mind you. And the director said he was looking at his notes and he goes, I have this speaking part. I didn't get somebody to do this. Who wants to do a speaking part this year? And I really did, but I hesitated. And then the woman next to me raised her hand and she got the part. And the entire year, we performed every few days in multiple cities and continents. And every single performance, I had to listen to her doing that when it could have been me. Now, of course, I'm glad that she had the opportunity. I'm the one that missed out, but this is a great example of how often we hesitate and we don't take action. Now, that's just one example. I'm going to give you a number of them, and hopefully, some of these you might relate to. So, another one is when I was coaching a senior director at Google, and she said, Karen, I have noticed that people aren't responding to my emails when I'm asking them to. I'm asking them to take action. I need to get their input, and I'm not hearing from them. So I said, well, why don't you send me a couple of those emails? Well, when she sent those emails to me, I was immediately able to see why people weren't responding because she was burying the information. The ask that she had was much later in the email, and well, many people are not going to read long emails. So, number one, couple of lessons in this actually. One is to make sure that you follow the rule of bottom line up front. BLUF from the US military, BLUF, BLUF, however you want to say it. It's an acronym for bottom line up front. And when you have that in your subject line, or at least in the first sentence of what you're saying in that email, that can help people know what your point is right away. And then they can decide if they want to read more. So in a subject line, I might say action needed on project X or your input needed by X date. When you have urgency, there's something about dates that also create urgency. So that's another thing that I would recommend so that you can get people's attention right away. And a lot of people think that they have to provide a case, make a case, build a case, and then make the point at the end of that case. And yet, the way most of us as human beings take in information and make decisions is we need to see and hear the big picture first, and then we can decide if we want to get into those details. So remember, point up front, then details. Another thing you could do related to emails is writing that first line or so where you say, here's the point or here's the bottom line. If you'd like to read more, please feel free to do so. All of the details for how I came to this conclusion are in the body of this email. Much, much clearer. Another one, a couple of personal examples that will relate. I was going to, I won't say it because I don't want to out this person, but I was going to visit a particular city, and one of my friends there and I agreed to have dinner. Well, there was another newer friend that I had asked if she wanted to get together. I said, I'm planning to have dinner with my friend earlier, but I'd love to see you later, maybe for dessert or something. So we had agreed on her meeting up around 7 or 7:30. after dinner that I was having with this friend around 5:30. Well, then she had asked, there was just some confusion back and forth around, well, maybe I could come for dinner. And then, and she said, but do you really want to spend time with this person alone? And then there was also some confusion on my part because I said I really would like to have dinner with her solo, but then you could come a little bit after. But at least we knew, at least in my mind, I thought we were definitely going to have her join us for dessert. Well, then she texted back and said something like, I don't want to come in the middle of this. Why don't we just get together after? And then I said, oh my gosh, you don't have to wait. Why don't you just join us? And then I finally called her and I said, what do you want to do? And she said, but I want you to network and I want you to enjoy time with your friend. And so she was overly accommodating. And then I was getting frustrated because at that point, I just needed clarity. Are you coming or not? And what time are you coming? We had talked about a variety of ranges from 5:30 to 7:30, and it was really funny. And it reminded me of the power of clarity. Clear is kind, as Brene Brown says, unclear is unkind. Remembering that when we have clarity, we come across as more defined, we're not confusing, and we don't make people burn a bunch of calories to try to figure things out. Remember the power of clarity and be careful about being that overly accommodating person where you're trying to make it so that that other person can enjoy things, but you really want to go. Because that's what was also happening is she kept saying, yeah, but I want you to enjoy time. I said, but what do you want to do? Do you want to join us or not? Would you rather come later? And then new information came in where she said that she usually starts winding down by 9 o'clock. So her place was quite a ways from where we were meeting. So I'm thinking, well, then why did we talk about 7:30 at all? Because you're going to be exhausted. So why don't you just come for dinner? It's so funny how these things that are seemingly harmless can create so much brain drain and emotional energy exhausted. So remember, be clear. Another example related to clarity is another personal example where a relative wrote an email, or somebody, we'll just leave it at that. Somebody wrote an email to me and said, so and so's in town for this date range. I think it was something like April 18th through the 21st. I was busy traveling. I was about to getting on the plane, seeing this email, and I'm thinking, and then she said, so that Saturday would work well. So then I'm having to burn more calories in my brain to try to figure out which of the dates in that range is a Saturday. And I responded back saying, confirming April 19th. And then it was funny because again, sometimes these things might not be a big deal, but I'm always thinking about how can you make your communication as clear and easy as possible for the person receiving it? The less confusion we can add into the mix, because believe me, because we're all humans, there's already going to be confusion in the mix based on how we interpret and we receive things. So the clearer you can make it up front, the clearer the expectations that you can have up front, the more successful and at least the higher likelihood of the communication or the event or the whatever it is will go off. The project at work maybe will go off well. This is one of the many things that we talk about in the Powerhouse, by the way. This is my group for women executives in hospitality. We meet twice a month and we talk through all these different situations. And what really fascinates me in being a part of this group, obviously I'm leading this group, is the power of people realizing they're not alone and that other people do these things too. And other people, like we talk about strategies to mitigate some of these issues. So if you're a woman in hospitality and you want to hear more about that, please feel free to reach out to me. So let's look at another example here. I was asked to coach another senior level client at a large corporation. Her boss said she was amazing, but she needed to work on her presence, her public speaking skills, and how she comes across. So we started working together, and she said, because I said, well, what do you want out of this? And she said, well, I would really like to not necessarily get promoted, but she said, I'm kind of getting tired of being in the same role. So I'd like to move into this other position. And there is a job opening available. So I said, great. Well, we were working a little bit on her presence and all of the things, recording, helping her with her voice, helping her with her facial expressions, her hand gestures, all of the things that we do in working on the presence component. And then I talked to her boss about it because I was in communication with her boss every once in a while about how things were going with the client. And I said, so she's definitely improving. I hope you can notice that. And she said, yeah, I definitely can. She goes, but here's the problem. The manager who is interested in, who has this job opening said, I'm open to talking with her, but I'm a little concerned because she never speaks up in meetings and she always has her camera off. So I have no idea how to gauge or assess her performance or what she's even like as a person. And that was so revealing. I thought, wow, that is a really powerful example of ways that we don't even realize that we are affecting our ability to advance. Again, where I started with the story in the beginning of Orange Theory, those blind spots that get in our way. The other thing that happens a lot when we introduce ourselves is we ramble on and on. We go on and on because we're not clear. We don't necessarily know what we're going to say. And I'm guessing this has happened to you somewhere at some point in your life, whether it's a networking event or maybe you've got a new person that joins the company and they go around and say, okay, everybody introduce yourself. And you may say a different version every single time. This is why I want to implore you to use my formula called PPU. It's to say something personal, something professional, and something unique about yourself. So when you're in an intro or when you are asked to introduce yourself or tell me about yourself, you'll never be struggling again because you have this framework. So it sounds something like this. Hi, I'm Karen Laos. I am originally from Minneapolis, but now I live in the Bay Area near San Francisco. I am professionally, so maybe you can actually use the words that will help you to get there. So it could be as simple as professionally, I help executive women overcome self-doubt and speak with confidence so that they can advance, have more opportunities, and get the promotions that they deserve. Something unique about me is that I always had this dream of living in Manhattan. So for the entire month of my 50th birthday, I lived there like a local. So those three things, it's very crisp. I've practiced it before. I might adjust it as needed because sometimes I don't bring up the Manhattan example because I might not have time. So maybe I make something shorter. Like I love vacationing in where it's sunny and beach, where there's a beach or something like that. But the idea here is that you have a framework that you're ready to go because when you think about advancing, you've got to make sure that you come across with clarity and that you are compelling. You're sharing examples. And a huge part of this is in how we come across, but also how we sound with our voice. So there's lots of different components. And that isn't the focus of today's episode so much, but it all is part of the deal. Because of the way we show up as human beings, we've got to recognize that there are things that we are saying. So there's the what, there's the content, the message itself, and then there's the how. I want to bring up another problem that I have seen people make. And this is another example from Orange Theory. When I was there this morning, I was noticing how much I love this particular instructor. And I was thinking, what is it about him? One of the things, and the way he commands the room, but with such friendliness, because we can have both. You can have warmth and assertiveness both. Part of the warmth comes through our facial expressions and our tone of voice. The assertiveness also comes through our tone of voice. So, what he does, it's so brilliant, is he's always telling us what's coming next, and then he doesn't let us wonder what's happening. He's very clear on here's what we're going to do. So, he starts with the big picture. We're going to do the row machine for X amount of times, or whatever it is, or on the treadmill, you're going to do this. And then he monitors us. Okay, you're going to go for 30 seconds right now. You're going to push. And then he says, okay, 15 seconds, halfway there. The whole time he is instructing us. But it's interesting. He does that, but he also balances it with space. Because sometimes if you're talking the entire time, it gets really hard to stay engaged with somebody who's doing that. So you also have to remember the power of the pause. This is that beautiful example of commanding the room. And the other thing that's really important with your voice is to show people that you are taking them somewhere. When you hesitate and ha, and stop yourself and halt in your speech, or you speak softer and more tentatively, all of that contributes to people deciding, I don't think this person is very confident or very credible. And then it goes deeper. I don't know that I really trust this person to take me somewhere. I don't know if this person is actually a good leader. There's all of these things that are happening almost in our subconscious that we don't, as the person that's speaking, we don't half the time even realize this is happening. And I witnessed this at an event where I was recently, where this guy introduced a speaker and he did it with such clarity and confidence in his speech. He spoke at a nice pace. He wasn't too fast. He wasn't too slow. And then sadly, a female leader came up and she's amazing. But when she got up there, she kind of hemmed and hawed and just, it just felt like, oh my gosh, she's not taking us anywhere. So remember, commanding the room is all about that combination of assertiveness in your voice, that vocal conviction, ending your statements with a period, punctuating those sentences, and not ending statements with a question mark, because then it sounds like you don't know what you're talking about. So lots of examples today around how to not miss opportunities anymore through what we say and how we say it. And remember, if you're interested in assessing yourself on where you stand in the 8 ingredients around communication to help us get to being a clear, compelling, and confident communicator, please take the confidence cocktail self-assessment and see where you fall. You also might be interested, if you don't have it already, 9 words to avoid and what to say instead, which could help you get promoted, help you come across with much more power and influence in the way that you come across. So until next time, have a great rest of your day.